Hi, my third book has been released. My third book in 3 years. From a man who failed his English O-level several times. Anything is achievable in life. Doesn't mean the book's any good. I think it's pretty good. So what's the book called? Here's the title. It's called Feminism, Myths, Lies and Ungratefulness. There's always been something about feminism I never liked, even as a child, even as a young boy, and I discussed that in the book. But first of all, let's get to a point I need to make. The word feminism isn't interchangeable with the word woman, okay? Because every time I talk about feminism, people say, you hate women. No. I dislike feminism, and I dislike some feminists. It's not interchangeable with the word woman, just like the word Nazi isn't interchangeable with the word German. Okay? Understand? Got that point? So we shall begin. What is feminism? Do you know? Have you got a definition? Most people waffle about it, and most people will say it means equality of the sexes. That's what it means. Feminism is just about equality of the sexes. Do you think so? My book disagrees with you. I look throughout the history of feminism and what feminists say, and you're going to be surprised. If feminism was just about equality, why call it feminism? Why not call it equalism? And the followers of equalism would be called equalists. That makes sense to me. But no, they called it feminism because it's a power grab. It's a power grab by a certain small group of women. They named their ideology after the feminine, so feminism. And who's the bad guy in the story? That's named after a male characteristic. That's named after patriarchy. So how can it have anything to do with equality when the good guys are named after women and the bad guys are named after men? Not very equal, if you ask me. Equality simply means you're going to be treated as poorly as everybody else. And that's where most people make the mistake. Most people think equality means you're going to be treated better. It doesn't. It just means you're going to be treated just like everyone else. And believe me, most people are not treated that well. And it's called equality. So let's talk about some of the feminists in the UK. There's two famous ones. They're the leaders of the feminist movement. To be fair, they're not self-declared leaders. They don't call themselves leaders. But the mainstream press, whenever they're talking about feminism, go to these two women. Okay? We have Germaine Greer. So what did Germaine Greer say about feminism? In her 2015 book, All About Women, she said, I've always been a liberation feminist. I'm not an equality feminist. Oh, that sounds a bit strange. She's not an equality feminist. So how can feminism be about equality? Here's one of their leaders saying she doesn't want anything to do with equality. Let's go to number two. Let's go to Julie Bindel. Julie Bindel, in her 2021 book, Feminism for Women, she said, feminism is a quest for the liberation of women from patriarchy. Feminism strives for a world in which women are not oppressed. Feminism prioritises exposing and ending male violence towards women and girls. Nothing at all about equality. Julie Bindel is only interested in violence against women and girls, which at face value is quite a good aim. But why isn't she against violence against anybody? That's equality. But she's not an equalitist. She's a feminist. And when she says violence towards women and girls, she only means specific violence. She only means about the perpetrators that fit her definition of a perpetrator, which are men, straight white men. Because she didn't say much about the grooming and gang rape of 10,000s of poor white British girls across the country, did she? Did any feminist speak out about that? I don't think so. Wrong type of victim and the wrong type of offender. Feminists don't like that. And if we're going to talk about violence, let's talk about female violence. Females in our country kill over a quarter, well, I say kill, let's be honest, murder, with help, but murder, over 250,000 babies a year. They call it abortion. 250,000 babies a year. Half are girls, half are boys. Where's the outcry of the genocide against the girls who are being murdered? Not a word. Why? Because the oppressor, the violent one, is a woman. 43% of all female crime in the UK is violence related. 43% of all female crime is violence. 10% of all murderers are women. Now, obviously 90% of murderers are men, and that's horrendous. But women are not scot-free. They still kill 10% of all murder victims. And then we need to talk about Evan Prizzy. She is an English campaigner. She now lives in America. Why does she live in America? Because in the 70s she set up the first hostel for women suffering from domestic violence in London. The first one in the UK. First one in the world, I believe. And after a couple of years she got kicked out of her own refuge. A bit like me getting kicked out of my charity. And why? Because radical feminists took over and decided she wasn't a radical feminist and kicked her out. She then had to leave the country because she was getting constant death threats, and the final straw was when the police had to start opening her mail because of letter bombs. You heard that right? Letter bombs from radical feminists against another woman because they didn't like what she was saying. And what did she say? She said women in her hostel were also violent, and nearly 70% of them were just as violent as the husbands they left. And she said violence is the problem, not just men. And feminists didn't like that, so they drove her out of the country. So do men commit all violence? Well, the answer is no. What about historically? Men have committed acts of violence. Men started all the wars. Men are evil. Oh, that's a feminist cry, almost word for word. The University of Chicago did a study on European kings and queens between 1480 and 1913 to see who started more wars. It turns out it was queens. And some of those queens you've heard of: Elizabeth I, Catherine the Great of Russia, Isabella of Spain, Queen Victoria. They worked out that queens started more wars and conquered more land than kings did in that period. So that blows out the myth that it's only men who cause war and only men who start violence. What we need to realise is humans are nasty, evil, violent creatures. We're all guilty. We all need to make sure we're trying to create a better world. We all need to make sure we control the anger, the Hulk that's in all of us, that rage. It's not just a male problem, it's also a female problem. You can't have a discussion around feminism, and especially violence, without mentioning the suffragettes. The suffragettes were amazing women. They got women to vote. No. All that's incorrect. The suffragettes were violent terrorists. Were violent Marxist communist terrorists. Ever heard that before? No. They started in Manchester. The house where they planned their terrorism is now a little bit of a shrine. We have a statue now in Manchester City Centre opposite the Town Hall of Emmeline Pankhurst, the founder of the suffragettes, because she's seen as a hero. She was not a hero. She was a violent terrorist. Now, am I being controversial? Am I making stuff up? Well, let's listen to what they said themselves. Isabel, the daughter, used the word terrorism to explain her actions. Emmeline stated she wanted to terrorise the British public. The suffragette newspaper had a special heading which was called The Reign of Terror, which listed everything they did, all their violence. Emmeline is quoted to have said her campaign was to make England and every department of English life insecure and unsafe. These weren't peaceful protesters. These were the extreme versions of Extinction Rebellion we have today, Just Stop Oil. They've not turned to violence yet, but they will. Mark my words, they will. So what did the suffragettes do? They planted bombs. They burnt down buildings. They invented the letter bomb. We say that again. They invented the letter bomb. They tried to assassinate politicians. They murdered 5 people and they injured at least 24. Most of them were postmen because of the letter bombs they would put in the post. Their motto was deeds, not words. They did deeds, all right. If you want to see who were the women who fought and got women the right to vote in this country, they were the suffragists, not the suffragettes, the suffragists. Check them out. They were much larger than the suffragettes. The suffragettes had like 2,000 members. The suffragists had over 50,000 members. It was them that lobbied their MP, lobbied government and got the right to vote for women, not the suffragettes. Most historians actually say the suffragettes' violence delayed women getting the vote because they backed politicians into a corner with violence and they were terrorists. And what do we say in this country? We don't negotiate with terrorists. They hampered the cause. They didn't secure the right for women to vote. All this is made up history since the 60s. Be careful what you read. So what is feminism? Feminism is whatever you want it to be. Absolutely whatever you want it to be. Let me tell you some of the strains of feminism. We have Marxist feminism, socialist feminism, anarchist feminism, equity feminism. We all know what that is. That's all far left ideology intertwined with feminism. Then we have different strains. Lesbian feminism, cultural feminism, ecological feminism, difference feminism, social feminism, state feminism, intersectional feminism, radical feminism, liberal feminism, eugenic feminism, abolitionist feminism, maternal feminism, it's getting hard to say now, new feminism, individualistic feminism, and the People's Front of Judea feminism. The last one I made up, but you get my point. Feminism split so many times it means whatever you want it to mean. And some of these types of feminism, eugenic feminism, started in America, and that was about making sure we had a pure race, that women were in control of it. Another topic feminists love is the privileges of men. Those men and their privileges. Let me tell you about the privileges of men. Men are more likely to be homeless, more likely to be rough sleepers, more likely to be unemployed, take their own lives, be murdered, be assaulted. They die earlier, more likely to be addicted to drugs and alcohol, more likely to lose their kids and lose contact with them, more likely to be in jail, more likely to fail at education, to die at work, to die in war. These are amazing privileges. But if these are privileges, then please, I wish someone would oppress me a little bit more, because I don't want these privileges. What feminists do is they ignore all the bad things that happen to men and concentrate on a tiny number of successful men and go, oh, look at men, look what men are doing. No, most men's life is a life of suffering. Men don't have choices. Men have to take responsibility and make their own way in the world. Women can do that as well, but women have choices. Women can work or not work, or work part-time, or have children, work full-time, work term time. Men don't have those choices. Men have to work or they're deemed a failure. The suffering of men is never accounted for. And then let's look at other privileges. Every day now we're talking about the Atlantic slave trade. Yeah, I'm going there. Almost twice as many men, black men, African men, were taken on those ships to be slaves than women. So even during the slave trade, men suffered more. And let's talk about the most evil man in the history of the world, Adolf Hitler. He killed twice as many Jewish men as he did women. So even when you have a psychopath wanting to wipe a race off the face of the earth, he privatised men more. Where's the privilege in any of this? There is no privilege. The women who spout this nonsense, deep down inside, hate men. And it's called misandry. So let's look at misandry. You can go online on any of the platforms, social media platforms, you can see the hashtag kill all men. You imagine if you said that about anybody else, kill all women, kill all black people, kill all Jews. Well, that one's quite apt at the moment, isn't it? All of that sounds wrong. So why does it sound wrong when it's kill all men? Why do people get away with that? Let's go back to the two feminists I talked about at the beginning. What do they say about men? Germaine Greer, in The Female Eunuch, her famous book published in 1970, she said, women have very little idea of how much men hate them. Men don't hate women. Men have never hated women. Some men may hate particular women. That's not a problem. We hate individuals, we don't hate groups. Julie Bindel, in August 2020, in The Critic magazine said, I have news for you. Sometimes we really do hate men, and oh boy, is it justified. They hate men. They tell us, we just don't want to listen. Social scientists cannot find any misogyny in men as a group because men prioritise females. Men place females higher in the pecking order than they do other men. And that's because it's our duty. It's a male trait to protect women, protect children, protect the tribe. Now, we're not doing a very good job of it at the moment. That's a given. But men do not hate women. But social scientists have studied women and they found misandry in women because women will prioritise other women. Men don't do that. Men are more likely to be an equalist. The last chapter of the book shows what men have done to improve the lives of women and that men deserve a thank you every now and again. I talk about inventions. I talk about the men who invented the mammogram machine that saves thousands of lives in the UK every year by detecting early breast cancer. I talk about the contraceptive pill, which freed women out of the home because they then could control their reproduction cycle. That allowed women to go to work, pursue careers. Men invented all that. And then I talk about Padman. Here's a fantastic story, Padman, also known as the tampon king of India. Here was an uneducated man who left school at 13, 14 to go to work because his family was poor. He then got married and he's realised every month when his wife had a menstrual cycle, she was searching for rags and old newspapers so she could turn them into sanitary towels and pad out her underwear with them. And he knew that's unhygienic. So he started a several-year-long quest to create his own sanitary towels. He was laughed at by his wife, by his family, by his neighbours, by his society. They all thought he was crazy. He walked round for months with a bag of blood connected to his thigh that dripped into his underwear so he could test his inventions. And eventually he created a machine that produced low-cost sanitary towels and is now called Padman. He sells these all over India to women's groups so they can produce their own sanitary towels so that the menstrual cycle doesn't stop them going to work, that they can do it hygienically. Big multinationals have wanted to buy his invention off him and he's refused. He doesn't want to give it to multinationals. He wants poor women to have the freedom and the low cost of having a better life. That's what a man did to help his wife and his daughters and his family and his country and the world. This is what men do to protect and improve the lives of women. Men are not the enemy of women. We're the partner of women. We love women. We want a better world for women. We protect women. Men lay down their lives for women. We're not their enemy. The enemy of women are called feminists. Because ever since the 60s, ever since we've had feminist policies being introduced across the West, the happiness rate of women has been declining every decade since. Men's happiness has stayed the same. So let me say that again. The more feminist policies we have in society, the more unhappiness women report. It's not working. Feminism, as Margaret Thatcher said, is a poison. So let me end by telling you what I think feminism is. Feminism is basically a lack of gratitude by a tiny minority of women for all the sacrifices, hard work and danger that men have put themselves through to benefit the lives of everyone in their group, community, country and planet. Feminism is basically ungratefulness. Don't believe me? Read my book. Many examples. It's available on Amazon. This book I had to self-publish because nobody wanted to touch it. I wonder why. But sometimes the truth hurts. You need to understand what feminism is really about, and women need to understand what feminism is really about. This culture war between the sexes has to end. We've got to team up for a better life. This war will take us into dark places. It's already making women unhappy. And it's damaging the family, which damages children. It has to stop. And the first way to stop this is you need to educate yourself. You need to read my book. You need to buy my book. That's what I'm really trying to say. Buy my book. Available on Amazon. Get it today. Link in the description. See you soon.